All Blacks losing run of 1998, folks. Believe it or not, back in 1998, the All Blacks dropped 5 games in a row. I bring this up because the world, well, at least the New Zealand world, is melting down a little bit with the current losing run of the All Blacks. I say losing run, it's like 2 losses away in Europe and then a win over the Irish and then 2 losses again. So one from the last 5 is not exactly a great record with 2 games away to South Africa coming up. There's, talk that the All Blacks may go on a bit of a losing run. And I've seen some younger people in the comments saying, man, when was the last time the All Blacks lost like 3 in a row or 4 in a row? Well, back in 1998, the All Blacks lost 5 games in a row. We played in the Tri-Nations, didn't win a single game. Aussie had the Bledisloe Cup. It was it was a rough time. I remember it because I was in high school. 1998, it's a wee while ago. Some of you guys will remember it clear as day, clearer than me, and some of you guys were not even born when this happened. But we'll go through this, talk about it quickly, draw some kind of parallels to what's going on with the All Blacks at the moment, and some things that were kind of distinctly different. But the games themselves, game 1, the All Blacks lose to the Aussies 24-16. Matt Burke scores, I think, all 24 points for the Aussies. He's remember, this Aussie team, which I got on the board here, is the same team which goes on to win the 99 World Cup. There's a bunch of legends in that Aussie team. It was a really good team. Gregan and Larkham and Burke and John Eales. There were a lot of good players in that Aussie team. So, no shame in that, losing away to the Aussies in what was a really good Aussie team. But then you lose at home to South Africa 13-3. Kept to 3 points at home for the All Blacks is not a very common thing. I haven't gone back to watch that game, but by all accounts, the reports at the time said the New Zealand handling was particularly poor, and Just van der Westhuizen helped kind of set up one of the tries for the Boks. So kind of no surprise there. That guy was an absolute legend wearing that Boks jersey. Then a loss at home to the Aussies, 27-23. By all accounts, this one was actually a pretty dominant performance from the Aussies, and the Kiwis got a couple of late tries to at least bring the scoreboard back to a more respectable level. And then away loss to finish the campaign. Both of these games were ones where the All Blacks had a decent lead and kind of managed to fluff it at the end. Game 4, 23-5 was the lead. South Africans score 3 tries in the last 15 minutes. Just van der Westhuizen gets 1. They get a maul try, 1 at the end, which John Hart thought was not a try, but they didn't have TMO back in those days. 24-23, famous comeback victory in Durban. And then game 5, All Blacks have got 11-0 lead. Matt Burke having a really shocking day with the boot. But then John Eales, and some of you guys, I only kind of remember the John Eales days. I don't want to say vaguely, but it's not like the prime of my rugby watching career, which is a pity because that guy was a legend. Like some of you guys who weren't born, I feel like an old man saying this, but the dude was a lock. His nickname was Nobody because essentially the old saying is nobody's perfect. Like the lock who did everything, including kicking goals. I know most of you probably know that already, but that's probably just blown at least one person's mind. The lock who kicks goals to win games for the Wallabies. So, second half, John Eales does the kicking, and the Wallabies come back to win that one. You got Christian Cullen, who's kind of like the old version of Will Jordan. Will Jordan is the new version of Christian Cullen, you know what I mean? Like just doing crazy attacking things. But essentially the All Blacks went none from 5. And they didn't sack the coach. Some things that were different, some things that were the same between what's happening with Ian Foster now and John Hart back in those days. There were people certainly calling for John Hart to be sacked. That's true. But the other big contender for the New Zealand job, kind of like what we've got with Razor at the moment, would have been Graham Henry. And Graham Henry by 1998 was already on board with the Welsh, so he wasn't actually an option to take over. If he'd been available, maybe that would have been a bit of a more difficult conversation. But as it was, John Hart was kind of the main guy. And John Hart certainly had more kind of credibility in his achievements with the All Blacks. I think the previous year, the All Blacks had gone like an unbeaten year. They virtually just won every game. I think they might have had one draw at the end of the season, but they just went on like a real barnstorming run where they just beat all comers, which was kind of incredible. And the year before that, in 1996, John Hart had taken the All Blacks to win their first ever Test series in South Africa. No All Blacks had done that. So he was making history in a good way. So he certainly built up a bit of credibility where people with Fozzie kind of point to, first ever loss against Argentina, first ever loss at home against Ireland kind of thing, like making history for the kind of wrong reasons. There was a parallel in that Sam Kane gets a lot of stick as All Blacks captain right now. Tane Randall, who was the captain at the time, also a loose forward, got a lot of stick as the All Blacks captain back then, but I think that was maybe a little bit different in that he was kind of a young captain amongst a team full of kind of senior guys, whereas Sam Kane gets, I think, more stick because he's compared to Richie McCaw, who was a legend, and he gets compared to Ardie Savia, who is a very different player from Sam, and kind of steals a bit of the limelight, doesn't he? So, I mean, Ardie Savia is one of the few All Black kind of standout players from that July series. So, yeah, Sam Kane gets compared there. So, it's a bit of a different situation, but kind of similar in that there's the criticism. There was certainly criticism of the way the All Blacks were playing at the time. Laurie Maynes, who was the former All Black coach before John Hart, and a pretty notorious rival, was like saying, is there a clear pattern they are playing to of this All Black side? Basically saying these guys are running around. They don't know what they're doing. There's not like a clear vision the way they're being coached, which is kind of what's being levelled at Fozzie now, but I take that Laurie Maynes comment with a bit of a grain of salt because, as I said, him and John Hart are not exactly best of buds. So, yeah, kind of doesn't surprise me that Laurie Maynes was kind of keen to stick the boot in. And interestingly, the NZRU Chairman at the time also said these results were unacceptable, similar to what Mark Robinson just said about Fozzie's home series loss to the Irish, that they were kind of unacceptable. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. What happened after this? The All Blacks did go on to win the Tri-Nations the next year. They didn't sweep and win the Bledisloe, though. They lost the final game to the Aussies pretty convincingly, I think, for that Wallaby side that would go on to win the World Cup. They went to the World Cup the next year, went out to the French in the semi-final, and that was kind of the end of things for John Hart in terms of his All Blacks head coaching role. But yeah, as I said, All Blacks have been on a bad run before, and I should say at the time, John Hart was also saying other teams are just really good right now. He really praised the Springboks and the Wallabies for being teams on the up, and kind of also mentioned, which might be a little bit different from now, that this All Blacks team was kind of having to rebuild a little bit with some kind of aging talent and bringing in some new guys. Like some guys like Fitzpatrick and Zinzad Brooke were kind of retired. I think Michael Jones was kind of at the end of his career. There's a few guys coming in, like Tane Randall, as I said, was kind of a young captain, but still had some pretty star players on the side. But yeah, I think just like Ian Foster's come out and said, man, that's a bloody good Irish side. There's not really any shame in losing to these guys. Obviously, you want to win, but kind of the same deal with this side. You got to give credit to the opposition. So there you go. All Blacks have been in a situation of a pretty long 5-game losing run before. Fozzie's losing run at the moment. It's only 2, but as I said, it's 1 from the last 5. So it's kind of comparable in that regard with a tough tour of South Africa coming up as I record this. But yeah, you guys have any thoughts? If you remember these games way back in the day, do let me know your thoughts and memories on these games. If you're too young for these, there's certainly some highlights of them on YouTube, although not really in full HD back in 1998, unfortunately. But you can certainly see some pretty good skills from some pretty mad players back in the day, from back when I was a much younger man. But anyway, you guys have any thoughts? And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.